Planning Commission. May we have a call to order and roll call, please?
Commissioner Ford?
Here.
Vice Chair Brady?
Here.
Chair O'Nines?
Here.
Commissioner Moore?
Here.
Commissioner Hancock?
Next, we have the approval of the minutes. First minutes meeting, the regular meeting for October the 2nd, 2017. Does anyone have any changes they'd like to make to those?
I've got just a couple tiny typos. At the bottom of page 2, there's a quote missing, an end quote missing on the first sentence after 45 dB. And on page 4 in line 10, it should say DUAL licensing, dual licensing, not dual licensing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any discussion on that?
No.
I can't call for
Move to approve.
approval, so
I move to approve the minutes.
Then I'll second.
could we have a roll call on that, please?
Commissioner Ford?
Yes.
Commissioner Brady?
Yes.
Excuse me, Vice Chair Brady. Chair O'Nines?
Abstain?
Commissioner Moore? Commissioner Hancock?
Yes.
Thank you for catching those. I
Yeah, thank you.
never see them. The next one is the approval for the regular meeting of November the 6th of 2017. Any discussion on that?
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Commissioner Ford?
Abstain.
Vice Chair Brady?
Yes.
Chair O'Nines?
Yes?
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Hancock?
Yes.
Good evening, Ms. Parker. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair, no changes.
I like. Okay, next we have oral and written communications. Public is asked to please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Please limit your comments to items not already agendized on for discussion tonight. Opening that up.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you, Chairman. For the benefit of the audience, my name is George Barrich. I'm a former city councilman here in Cotati, and I want to bring to your attention that it recently came to my attention in the last week or so that a planning commissioner here posted a very negative review on my business, my personal business, Yelp page, which had nothing to do with my business, someone who's never frequented my business, retained me for any services, and went on to talk about my politics in such a disgusting and derogatory way that was so vicious, so demeaning, so personal, full of lies, full of venom, for the sole purpose of injuring my personal reputation and my business reputation, to damage my business. And that commissioner is Neil Hancock. Now, I had Yelp. This came to my attention just recently because I don't follow my Yelp page. This long diatribe of lies and slander had been on my page for 3 years. I asked Yelp to remove it. They did remove it. They're still questioning whether they're going to ban Mr. Hancock from Yelp. But I want to explain to you that this isn't the first time Mr. Hancock has disparaged the city, cost the city over $100,000 in legal fees, and some $50,000 in paying me damages for lies and mischief representing the city of Cotati. So I want to be a fair man. I want to ask Mr. Hancock to step down in disgrace so we can end this matter tonight as gentlemen. I'm not a cruel man, so I'd ask him to discuss that with anyone he feels necessary, discuss that with the mayor, with the city council, before he makes his decision. He has 24 hours. The Planning Commission is supposed to follow the Cotati council members' code of conduct. It's not specific, but it was discussed when I was on the city council that the code of conduct also applies to other boards and commissions as a guideline. Mr. Hancock's antics have disparaged all of you, have crossed the line. We can avoid a lawsuit, a personal lawsuit, and a lawsuit against the city. For Mr. Hancock, as we all know, as all of us as elected officials and appointed officials, represents the city 24 hours a day in our conduct. It's a serious matter. And I'm going to be a fair person to say we can let this go. Mr. Hancock needs to step down.
Okay, thank you. Have we any other oral or written communications? Hearing none, we'll close. Going on to matters at hand, we have the chair and vice chair elections.
Yes, Mr. Chair, our typical practice, at least for the last few years, has been to take nominations from the commission first for the, well, I suppose the order doesn't matter, but I think we've traditionally done vice chair and then chair. Allow those nominees to accept the nomination or not, and then a vote. So we don't have a staff presentation for that, but we're happy to facilitate as the commission desires or needs.
Have we had any nominations for vice chair?
I would nominate Commissioner Moore for vice chair if she's willing.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
I would just like to say I'm not interested in being chair, so I feel like I should put that out there now if it changes any of the discussions for the nominations for vice chair or chair. So putting that out there.
You're not interested in either?
No.
Okay.
Do you want me to be chair and? Okay.
So we have two, I think, on the table, right? So do we have to? Was there a nomination and a second? There wasn't a second. Okay. So maybe.
I want to clarify. I'm not hearing very well what's going on here.
Did you make a?
Would you like to be?
Yes, Carrie, so if we have a nomination and a second, do we just let that die? Or do we have to go through with that and do a vote?
Well, we can take other nominations.
Okay.
So, I mean, given what Commissioner Brady just said, I would actually be interested in hearing from everybody any interest or availability for serving in these posts prior, maybe, to making nominations.
I'm fine with chair. That's fine.
I am not available to be chair this year.
Would you be available to be vice chair this year?
I could be.
I'm sorry?
I could be, yes.
Okay, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Ford for vice chair then.
I accept that, but there's no second yet, so.
I'll second that for vice chair. I guess we need a roll call. Okay.
Commissioner Ford?
I'm going to abstain.
Vice Chair Brady?
Yes.
Is there discussion, public discussion? Input?
I don't think so. No.
Ms.
Sure can be.
Mr.
Okay, I'll open it up.
You're really showing your colors right now, showing that none of you want to be on this planning commission, obviously. Why don't you see if there's other avenues? We need a strong planning commission, one, not people that are willy-dilly on whether they want to be part of it or not, or take positions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's wonderful to see a planning commission meeting tonight, given the fact that so many planning commission meetings have been canceled in the last few years. So it's really nice being here tonight. But I would like to bring your attention to some parliamentary procedures. I'm a little rusty, but let's review. When you have an issue before you, you're open for discussion, and somebody can make a motion. That motion can stand there while there's discussion. As soon as there's a second, you can discuss it further. But there's a motion on the floor and a second. There can't be two motions on the floor at the same time. At any time, in your infinite wisdom, you can have a healthy and lively discussion. But at some point, you either have to end the discussion and call for a vote, or the person who put forth the motion can withdraw their motion. Okay? So it's, we all should be pretty versed in all this by now, especially Mrs. Moore, who has a lot of experience with this. So I just want to keep you on track. It's not rocket science, but these are basics.
I'll take responsibility for having messed up that procedure. Is there any discussion about nomination for Mr. Ford as vice chair? I'm sorry, we're still open for public discussion. Is there any more public discussion? Closing that. May we go to roll call?
Commissioner Ford? Vice Chair Brady?
Yes.
Chair O'Nines?
Yes?
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Hancock?
Okay, now we're opening for chair elections.
I would nominate Commissioner Moore for chair.
And I will second that. Now we should open it for public discussion. Is there any public discussion for Ms. Moore to be chairman of the Planning Commission? None? We'll close. May we have roll call?
Commissioner Ford?
Yes.
Vice Chair Brady?
Yes.
Chair O'Nines?
Yes?
Commissioner Moore?
Abstain.
Commissioner Hancock?
Yes.
And I congratulate you both and
Thank you so much.
willingly hand this over to you.
And I apologize that I'm battling a cold, which I think everybody else is in this world. So if I cough and sneeze and stuff, and I didn't want to miss Planning Commission tonight. So we're heading into our next matters at hand, which is item B, which is findings for the hotel of development. So, Ms. Parker.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This item is fairly narrow in focus. As you read in the packet, that Whenever the city acquires or disposes of real property, there's a requirement in the state government code that we do a finding, the city's planning agency make a finding that that purchase or disposition is consistent with the city's adopted general plan. So the consistency finding that we're asking you for tonight is simply for the sale or disposition of the property. There's no development project yet in application, so it's simply a finding that the sale of the property for the sole purpose of developing a hotel on that particular property is consistent with the city's general plan. So, of course, any development applications that are received are going to come through the city's typical development review process. So at that time, we would see all of the consistency with the development standards of both the land use code as well as the downtown specific plan. So this finding that you're making tonight simply allows the city manager to move forward with execution of the purchase and sale contract or the development agreement that's in the packet for you, and allows the developer the assurance that he's got at least the land use clearances or that consistency finding with the general plan to move forward. So that's what we're asking the commission for tonight. And this is an action that is the authority for which resides solely with the planning agency or the planning commission, so it doesn't go on from here, it stops with the planning commission. And I did include in the packet the disposition agreement that went to the council, and so I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about that if you want to, just to understand the structure of it. I know the city manager's in the audience tonight, so we can also query him for any answers, and we're happy to do that.
Is there any questions of staff?
Just want to make sure this finding doesn't override any land use restrictions or specific plan requirements or things like that. For instance, limits on size, or those would all be part of the development package we'd see later, right?
Yes, that's correct. This government code requirement is really there to ensure that local agencies follow their general plans as far as the prioritization and disposition of property, so that an agency, for example, couldn't just sell it for a recycling yard if that was the most profitable use for it, but it was not consistent with the general plan. That government code just requires that we keep implementing the general plan.
Any other questions?
I must admit my ignorance. I don't understand the phrase recitals where it relates to this.
Sure, the recitals are just the whereas statements in the resolution. So if you go to packet page 23, the way we structure our resolutions, before we get to the findings, we provide you with a variety of what we call recitals, which are background, more or less. They're the points that we think are salient to enable the decision makers to make a conclusion about the resolution.
Thank you. Actually, on page 23, that's the city council resolution. Ours is on packet
Oh.
page 111.
Thank you, sorry.
Right.
We've got the privy there. Neil, do you have anything?
I don't know.
So I'm going to open this up to the public. Would the applicant like to come up first and speak, and then we can have...
Good evening. My name is Ken Molinaro, and I'm the potential developer of the hotel property. What would you like me to speak about? And I'm sorry that I have my back to y'all.
Maybe just a little background of the project, a little background of what if you're local or...
Yeah, yes, I am. I was born in Pittsburgh, California. My folks moved to Santa Rosa in 1958. So my family's been here for a long time. my career started out in real estate development in the Santa Rosa, Sonoma County area. I relocated far south to Mexico about 25 years ago. I spent 20 years in Mexico building and developing resorts and hotels. And then about 5 years ago, my wife and I moved back up here. I'm glad I have this opportunity. I think the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to clear up a couple of misconceptions that came out of the Press Democrat article about this development. I have a business arrangement with a company called Hard Rock Hotels, which everybody knows Hard Rock. Hard Rock Hotels is owned by the Seminole Indian tribe in Florida. They own a number of casino hotels, and of course they own all the Hard Rock cafes in the world. They, about 3 years ago, started a new division where they're franchising hotels, a la Hilton or Marriott or Hyatt. Hard Rock is coming out with a new brand called Reverb, which is an entirely different kind of concept from the Hard Rock. Hard Rock Hotels, as a name, Hard Rock Hotels are, obviously everybody knows them. You go to Vegas to the Hard Rock, and you party till 5 in the morning. This is not what we're building. This is a very, very low-key, upper-end, limited service property that is not designed to appeal to wild, crazy partiers in any respect. I mean, our room rates will be $200 plus. Very, very different thing, and I've heard this comment several times in the past couple of months. Hard Rock Hotels as a company does not or will not own this hotel. My family will own the hotel. The only relationship between myself and my family and Hard Rock is strictly that I'm acquiring the license from Hard Rock Hotels to call my hotel a Reverb. So this is not a big giant Florida gaming corporation coming into your town. This is my family from Santa Rosa. So I think it's just important to make that distinction, because I wasn't really clear in the Press Democrat. But given that, our plans are to build somewhere between 130 and 150 rooms in this Reverb hotel. Those rooms will be very nice size. In the hotel public areas, we'll have a lobby bar, some meeting space, a gym, a lounge, all of the things that you normally see in that sort of price range of a hotel. There's nothing really spectacularly different in it than any other hotel in that price range. Small pool, but the idea of Reverb and what they would like to do and what we would like to do is, the idea is to sort of bring the local people into the hotel. So I mean, we'll have a bar, we'll have a small snack bar. You could have breakfast in the morning, you could have cocktails in the evening. We're very concerned about how the pedestrian paths and the pedestrian walkways are going to work. We're obviously very concerned about the traffic and how the traffic patterns will work. And it's really, this is, for me, and I said, my career has been in a lot of different places, and it's been a long time since I did anything in Santa Rosa. This hotel is the place where I'd like to hang out. It's a family place. We're very, 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 very aware of and have great concern that this project and this hotel be built in a manner that is in keeping with the Sonoma County sort of culture. We realized that when I was a kid, I picked prunes and picked apples for a living. I mean, we're aware of the agricultural background here. We're aware of the wine industry here, and so the sort of the ethos of this hotel will be, this is a Sonoma County project. It'll look like Sonoma County, it'll act like Sonoma County, it'll breathe like Sonoma County, and we really, and take it for what it's worth because I'm the real estate developer who's proposing this, but we really, really want to do something that will be a credit not only to Cotati, but Sonoma County and to my family as well.
Great. Does anybody have any questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm opening it up to anyone else.
I'm urging the Planning Commission to not find this in consistency with the general plan, because this is a done deal. This is the deal from 2014, before the general plan was done. Says that the city will provide the sewer and water infrastructure, which they did. They did the frontage improvements, they did all of this before a contract was signed. This is the hotel. By the way, I have public records to document almost 400 pages. They've had two LLCs on this since 2014. This is 150 rooms. It is on 3 parcels. They had to wait for 3 parcels to come. Everybody would sell. It is not just a disposition agreement that the city council passed. It is a it's also a development agreement. It follows what is in the original 2014 agreement. This is highly illegal. It is misappropriations of the citizens' money to fund improvements through the gateway northern gateway, and on sewer funds for putting in the sewer line capable of handling a hotel in 2015. The general plan was done, the meetings were in January and February, and when public came, and there was 2 full packed rooms of people who wanted no growth or slow growth in Cotati. There was no mention of a hotel. The hotel was in the works back then. It was supposed to be done by now. The original date, it was 2017 to be finished. This was not the people's wishes for Cotati. The general plan did not have those 80 comments put in about the slow growth, because it was after the public comment time. When I asked for it to be added in, those 80 comments, I was denied by Vicki, even though, and they improperly changed the plan with putting in, changing the Gilman Ranch one without an ERR, new ERR, sorry. This has all been, it's all wrong. You can't have a general plan. They knew the hotel was coming in. If the general plan should have been discussed in those 2 meetings if it was coming in, which they absolutely knew. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
This is the exhibits. This is the map of the.
Give those to Carrie if you like.
This is the map of the development. This is the development. This is the hotel, and this is the plan.
Mr. Barish.
Commissioners, I agree 100% with Ms. Alderman. You ought to be outraged at what's before you. You need to either vote no or you need to abstain. And let me explain why, besides what Lori presented. First of all, I've never seen something so outrageous where you put the cart before the horse. The presenter tonight, the applicant, made almost the exact same presentation that he made to you tonight had very eloquently done before the city council last month, almost word for word. And I was shocked because it was supposed to come before you first. Then it goes to the city council. But this is all backwards, okay? You probably saw what the presenter said on the video cast of our city council meeting. So you're already kind of up to speed to what the presenter already said tonight. So I had to listen to it again. But that aside, the fact is, this is so much different than what you normally deal with. Normally, private property owners sell pieces of property to the government or other private individuals. They come together with a project. It goes through the normal channels of applications, comes before you, and your power and your experience, and you feed your decision up to the city council. In this case, we have a public entity selling a piece of property to a public entity, this city. The city does an end around the public, no public workshops, no get-togethers, no hearings, no plan of what we want to do on that piece of property, completely jumping over your head and the heads of your neighbors. This is the ultimate insult. And I so heartfully feel for you people who have served the community and been so in touch with the community and wanting to have your pulse on the community to hear what they want to see done in Cotati, to have it leaped over you like this and brought to you in this fashion. I'm almost speechless. I really don't understand it. You should be outraged. You should just really abstain and force this back to the city to have a public workshop on what this community wants to see out on that property, which is public property. This isn't a private project. And I hope you see the logic in this. We're making a very big mistake tonight going forward with your approval of this project. It will forever be a stain on your reputation in Cotati. I'm going to beg you, don't do it. It's going to set a very, very bad precedent on how public properties are dealt with in this city.
Would anybody else like to come up and speak on this? Seeing none, I'm going to close public hearing. So I think the discussion tonight, what I see, or what I've heard from Ms. Parker, is that we are talking about consistency with the general plan. So I'd like to stay on topic on that. So I'm going to start with Neil.
Yes, thank you. I think that we've discussed a lot in the city, and I've certainly been through a lot of public processes about the downtown-specific plan, and also, just what we'd like to see in different parts of the city. This particular area has been upgraded, Old Redwood Highway, and the purpose was to try and attract something that was in something that would do the economic development of Cotati. So I think looking at a hotel in the downtown specific area, it fits very well with the general plan, with the idea that people will be able to easily get off the freeway, will be able to easily access the downtown area, can walk to the downtown. So, I mean, I certainly think it's something that fits with the general plan. I mean, it's got the characteristics of what's been talked about for 10 years.
Anyone else like to comment on this? Any discussion?
I agree with Neil. It's completely consistent with the Northern Gateway and downtown specific plan, and around which we did have lots of discussion and public input. So I think it's implementing what was in there, and the property was acquired by the city from the state for the purposes of identifying appropriate development for that spot, and that's what we've done. So I think it's completely consistent.
I read this carefully, and I want to ask you point blank, Ms. Parker, exactly what is in front of us. I don't want to appear imbecilic, but I don't really understand what we are talking about this evening.
Sure. So with think of how best to explain it. So when we receive a development application for the hotel, that's when the project will go through a typical development review process. So it'll be reviewed by staff against all the development standards in the DSP and the general plan and the land use code. It will go to design review for an evaluation of all the design components, and if the design review committee recommends planning commission approval, then it would come to you for all of the associated approvals and entitlements. That would be the normal process if it were not a city-owned piece of property, if it were simply a private development project on a private piece of property. Because this particular property is owned by the city, we have the additional requirement to find the sale of the property consistent with the general plan. And so how the development agreement is structured is that it is a particular agreement for a particular use, i.e. a hotel. So that's what we're looking for consistency for. Even at the staff level, we weren't just offloading a piece of property. We, as Commissioner Ford said, we went out to gain control of that property for the specific purposes of implementing the downtown specific plan, just as we've done with the road project that's out there and the public plazas. We have been bit by bit consistently implementing the DSP. And so among the allowable uses of the Northern Gateway is lodging. And in addition to just the fact that it's an allowable use, the TOT that's generated by the hotel is an additional revenue source for the city. So that was our first priority. How do we develop it consistent with the general plan? And how do we develop it in order to achieve the other city goals that we have? And of course, one of those is revenue sufficient to provide city services. So we were lucky enough to have a couple of good applications previous to the actual agreement that we entered into with Mr. Molinaro. We had discussions with another group, and that one didn't, and so the development agreement was negotiated around we had a variety of structures, if you will, throughout that development agreement negotiation, because we were trying to find out what would the market bear, what's a fair price of the land, what city projects are happening that are going to assist the development of a hotel or not assist the development of a hotel. We had all kinds of metrics that we were looking at to see, what is really going to pencil in the end. So one of the speakers made references to a variety of city projects that are assisting this hotel, and I will say that there's not one city project that is in place to assist this hotel. They're all projects that are either in the DSP or they're in the water sewer master plan. So at the end of all of those machinations, Mr. Molinaro submitted what we felt was a very winning proposal, and that resulted in really a very simplistic property transaction, so long as it is consistent with the general plan. So that was kind of a long-winded explanation, but I guess the takeaway is that a development project, whether it's public property or private property, is going to come back through our regular process, and so of DRC, Planning Commission, and potentially City Council. All we're asking for tonight is the question, if this property were sold with the terms of this development agreement, would the development of a hotel, would the sale of that property for the development of a hotel be consistent with the general plan? And inclusive of that question really is it consistent with the downtown specific plan? Because the downtown specific plan is a component of the general plan.
May I continue?
Sure.
So it's fair to say we are at the onset of a very arduous and time-consuming timeline here.
We are at the onset of, this is a piece of a development process that the commission doesn't usually see because it's happening on the developer side with property transactions. The fact that it's a city-controlled piece of property is why you're seeing it early, but the development piece of it is going to go through all of our typical public process, if not more. You know, it may be that we decide that we want to bring concepts forward, or we may want to have different kinds of public input sessions as we go. We haven't seen anything yet, so we don't know the answer to that, but certainly at a minimum, it's going to go through our typical public meetings and hearings process.
Does anybody else like to speak? I just would like to say the 30 spaces that are going to be public, that was put into there. I don't know if anybody caught that, because of the, we took the park and ride on the other side of the freeway. So, but the 30 spaces are going to be public, and that's required through that. I think it's very apropos that we do this. We've actually had a couple hotels that have been approved in Cotati and never built. One right across from Silver Barrel Deli, the oldest Silver Barrel Deli. I'm dating myself, but that was a hotel that was never built, but very consistent with what, at least back in the day, people wanted was a hotel, especially the folks that were in, the parents of Sonoma State students. And just recently, I've heard quite a few people that go to the Sonoma State concerts would like a hotel in town. So I'm all for it. So I'm calling for a motion.
I'll propose a motion for it.
I am not. So I have a motion.
A second?
I'll
And a
second.
roll call?
Second, yeah. Sorry, Carrie.
Vice Chair Ford,
Yes.
Commissioner Brady,
Yes.
Commissioner Onines,
Yes.
Chair Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Hancock.
Yes.
So we're going to be moving along to our next agenda item, which is item C, and that is the cannabis ordinance. Can I have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. As the commission, I'm sure remembers, because you put a lot of hard work into it, on October 2nd of 2017, staff brought forward the fundamental requirements or standards for the development of an ordinance, and this commission gave us additional feedback and helped us problem solve on several issues that are detailed on page 115 of the staff report. And following that October 2nd hearing or meeting with the Planning Commission, we took it on to the City Council on October 24th, and the City Council further refined some provisions of the ordinance. They agreed and retained all of this commission's recommendations, with the exception of the ban on outdoor cultivation. And with that, the council asked us to please develop an alternative for some level of outdoor cultivation. So that's why in your packet you have really two section 14.210s, because one is an alternative that allows for limited outdoor cultivation for personal use. Along with that, if you recall, the commission, sticking with that topic for a moment, the commission had recommended that there was not a need for an administrative permit to be issued to folks that were doing personal cultivation, that they were allowed, that cultivation was allowed by the state, so there was no need for them to get a permit. So when we last visited that issue, there was still an administrative permit requirement for caregiver cultivations. And in the time since that, since those October meetings, the state has released their final regulations, and we've been having a series of conversations with law enforcement about what are the practicalities of caregiver cultivation, how hard is it to differentiate someone doing caregiver cultivation versus personal cultivation, and several other sort of nitty-gritty details like that. And ultimately where we settled with the personal and caregiver cultivation is that we should set them both at the same level and not require permits for either, because if we set them both at, for example, the 6 plants that are allowed by the state, then if someone has 6 plants, it doesn't really matter to the police department whether they're growing it for their personal use or whether they have caregiver cards. It may, the caregiver cards with the qualifying patient IDs may matter to the state, and it may matter for several important reasons, but for our local police department, just trying to monitor how many plants are on parcels, it doesn't really matter. So what we've come back with here tonight is a recommendation to waive a permit requirement or to not initiate a permit requirement for either personal adult use, recreational use, or for caregiver cultivation, but to limit the caregiver cultivation to the same 6 plants. So that is in our base recommendation, along with a recommendation still to ban outdoor cultivation. And then the alternative that was in the packet is the one that allows for limited outdoor cultivation.
So I have a question. The limited outdoor cultivation is 2 plants per residence, but no apartments, no condominiums. It'd have to be a regular residence.
That's correct. It's limited to parcels that have a single-family dwelling on them.
So when you say single-family dwelling, can you have any granny units? Is that included in any of that? Because there's a lot of loopholes on these.
It's a single-family residence, and that is simply to get to a base where if you're doing outdoor cultivation, it's 2 plants, regardless of how many adults are living on the property.
Okay.
The other issues that came about since you saw it last, the Assembly Bill 133 removed the requirement for separate and distinct premises. So if you recall, when we talked about this last time, the licenses that are to be issued by the state must designate through either an A or an M, whether the licensee is doing commercial cannabis activity for adult or recreational use, or whether they're doing it for medicinal purposes. And those 2 licensed premises needed to be separate and distinct, so there was a physical separation between those operations. AB 133 came along and removed that requirement for separate and distinct. And so what that means is that the trail of whether the operator is dealing with adult use cannabis or medicinal cannabis becomes, and I don't want to diminish it because I know it's a very difficult exercise, but I'm going to call it a paperwork exercise versus a physical separation. So when last we spoke about dispensaries, this was all evolving, and we had agreed on 2,000 square feet of dispensing area for the retailers. And then when we got to the council, we said, oh, there's, does that mean 2,000 square feet divided into an A and an M, or does that mean 4,000 square feet? And the council agreed that it made sense for a retailer to have 4,000 square feet if they had both license types, an A and an M. So now with the removal of that separate and distinct, what's in the draft ordinance tonight before you is a limit of 2,000 square feet. So it's kind of back to where we started with, if there's no need for physical separation, then 2,000 square feet is sufficient. I know that there are some members of the public that are going to want to talk about that, but the recommendation is before you is just 2, not 4. A couple of other changes that came about in either the regulations or in that assembly bill, there was a new license type added, which is a non-storefront retailer. So it's a retailer that serves customers through delivery only. So the customers or patients might place an order online or via the phone or some app that the provider has developed, and then that product gets delivered. That to us was not an appropriate license type for our retail areas because it would occupy retail space but be closed to the public. And really what it functions as is a distributor. And so we've allowed for one of those license types, but we've put it in the industrial areas where the manufacturing, distribution, and testing facilities are, and not in the retail area. And because the primary issues, let me just add, the primary issues associated with that license type to us would not be parking, they wouldn't be security of big open storefronts, they wouldn't be impacts on other retailers in a same center. They would be more about security of product that's stored for distribution, and that was primarily what was driving the recommendation. And then finally, I guess what I'd like to add is that the council made a point of the fact that alternative energy and water sources are not always a negative thing. It could be that there are sources of energy or water that actually expand the viability of commercial space and don't detract from watersheds or water tables, water supplies, that kind of thing, and that an applicant should at least be enabled to show us that. So we've just added in several places that alternative sources are not allowed unless otherwise approved by the city. So just it opens it up during the permitting process to show us that it's a good thing, and allows for the council to approve that license if they agree. And I think those are the major things that I wanted to call out as changes since you saw it last time. We added, as I mentioned, the one additional license capacity to the manufacturing section to accommodate at least one of those type 9 licenses, so that number went from 6 to 7. All of the other limitations limits stayed the same. The retail recommendation stayed the same. For license, the cultivation stayed the same. I did provide for you a larger format of table 2-2 and 2-3 on the dais so that it's just easier to read, and there are copies of this available in the back for the public. And I gave you all also a copy of the license types, and then finally a copy of the CEQA exemption explanation, which was not in the packet when it went out on Thursday, and we've since finalized that and put it online. And I think with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great. I'm going to start with this side of the room.
Let's see. So the type 9 licenses, you're not saying they wouldn't be allowed anywhere, just they wouldn't be allowed in retail. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I'm sorry, type what?
Type 9, which is the delivery-only retailer,
Yeah.
would still be allowed in commercial industrial and general industrial, something like that.
I think I'm okay. I think I want to hear from the public before I ask questions.
Do you have anything?
Oh, one more. Can I back up to one more question?
Yeah, sure.
So the two versions, one of them limits outdoor personal cultivation to 2 plants. The other one is 0 or 6?
The base recommendation is 0 outdoor cultivation. Yeah, it allows the 6 by the state, but it all has to be indoors.
So actually, I had a question on that as well. So what you want us to do is recommend whether or not the 2 or the 0?
Correct, to make a recommendation to the council whether you think that the 2 outdoor plants are appropriate or whether it should be 0.
And it's 2 out of a total of 6 that an individual property could be cultivating.
That's correct.
So I have a question. So if you did 6 plants indoor, that would be no outdoor. So if you did 2 plants outdoor, you could do 4 indoor.
So each of the recommendations allows for 6, whether you're growing them for recreational purposes or whether you are a caregiver with qualified patients. You get 6 regardless of what purpose you're growing them for. With the base recommendation, all 6 of those must be inside the dwelling unit or an approved accessory structure. In the alternative, it's still limited to 6 plants, but 2 of those could be grown outdoors.
Okay. I just have one more question. I have one more question. So the industrial area, the delivery, I just have some questions about security on that. Because I see the security of like having secured product in an industrial area, but you're having cars go in and out, picking up. I mean, how's that all going to work? Because you're picking up cannabis, you're delivering it. Are you picking up cash? Isn't it like pizza? Are you picking up cash? You know, I mean, this is all new. This is like a new realm for here. You know, I'd like to explore that a little bit because I know that somebody's going to be waiting there to jack one of these cars. You know, I mean, I don't know. I'm just being devil's advocate on this, but it seems like if I knew that this is where they're picking up, all the cannabis, and then they're driving it all around Cotati and picking up cash, I don't know. It seems like a bad deal.
I would say that I think most reasonable people would share your concern about it, and the state has a few regulations about what those vehicles must be. They must obviously be safety inspected and secure and all that. A lot of the nitty-gritty safety precautions are going to be up to the individual operators and how they, so the state regulations are mostly about tracking the products and the sales transactions. So there's quite a bit of information in there about tracking individual product, and the revenue generated from that individual sale. But the regulations don't have a tremendous amount to say about the safety of either that driver or people at the location where they're delivering. That's really, again, up to the operator to make it as safe as they would like. I will add, though, that the dispensary, the retail licenses also allow for delivery. All of any retail licenses that we issue will automatically have that ability to also do delivery.
Okay.
I'd like to also just comment that I'm sure that as this moves along, if one of those were allowed a type 9, that, you know, the police department would have a lot of input on securing that type of business. I know I would be highly interested in part of that security plan.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions on this? Steve?
This may cause a groan. Page 133F. Weapons and firearms are prohibited on the property. I've called my personal attorney. She hasn't returned my call yet. Is that constitutional? Is that legal for us to say a property cannot have a firearm?
Yes, we believe it is. It's within the city's local police powers. It's not, this requirement or this standard is not in the personal cultivation, so I think we'd be way out on a limb prohibiting that from someone's residence, but we do have the right to curtail those from being on the site of any commercial operation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We definitely cannot prohibit somebody from having firearms in their homes, but there are restrictions regarding businesses.
I will say similarly, there's a prohibition against having alcohol on the site.
And prohibition on using cannabis on site as well.
Okay. Anybody else have anything for staff, or I'm going to open this up for the public? We good? All right. I'm going to open it up for the public.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission and staff. I'm Craig Litwin. I'm with 421 Group. I've been working with Mercy Wellness to help them in all ways that I can through this process to create a more open and kind of informative process to make sure that tours are happening for those who wish to take them. I really want to commend this board or this commission, the council and the staff in particular, for the hard work that you all have done. There's been a lot of moving parts, and through the urgency ordinance and through developing the permanent ordinance here, I realize that you're all doing a lot of work, and again, especially the staff. So thank you for your time on that. In the sense of urgency and kind of moving this forward, I do want to compel you to ensure that we keep the ball rolling and urge you to pass the ordinance tonight and bring it to the council. Because you passed the urgency ordinance, a temporary license was allowed to be acquired by Mercy Wellness at the state level, but that has a sunset to it, and so getting the permanent ordinance passed so that they can apply for permanent licensure status at the state level is imperative for that local business. Hearings take time. We recognize that, but so do applications, and they'll have to go through a CUP process as well before they go to the state level. So there's a lot of effort and time that has to move forward here. So one clarification, I do want to point out that the full council in October did say 2,000 square feet for A and 2,000 square feet for M made sense. I do recognize that's when it was separate and distinct. Now that we can thankfully consolidate that use together, which makes it easier, it's not quite as much space as needed. Perhaps there's a compromise where it's 3,000 square feet could be used for the retail space for a combined A and M, because, you know, there's still going to be a number of more patients and 21-year-old adult users who are coming in. There are more staff members that they'll have, more cash registers, but where they could cut down on some of the square footage are display cases. And that's a big space, you know, in the dispensary floor. For those of you who have taken a tour, it's really tight, especially with the new display case that's there now. It's even tighter, so that extra 1,000 square feet, again, if it were combined to allow the 3,000 square feet total for A and M, would be most appreciated. That's all I have for this evening, and thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Grant. Anybody else like to come up and speak? She beat you to you're next.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners and staff. My name is Karen Mantelli, and I work with Mercy Wellness on bringing this project forward. I'd like to thank the staff and the Planning Commission for all the time they've invested so far in this ordinance and moving it forward. In an effort to keep this ordinance moving forward, I have some comments. The only place that I see that adult use is mentioned is under the commercial cannabis uses definition. Unless I missed it elsewhere within the draft ordinance, it's not mentioned under standards for commercial cannabis retail sales. I'm suggesting that the Commission consider inserting wording clarifying that adult use sales and medical use sales are allowed under the commercial cannabis retail sales section. I don't have the section right in front of me, but there's a section for that. I also would like to suggest the Commission consider allowing up to 3,000 square feet for the sales area, being that the A and the M are going to be in the same retail space, which is large enough to accommodate both the A and M uses. So those are my comments about the draft ordinance. And again, I recommend that the Commission make a recommendation to the City Council to introduce the ordinance as a first reading and to amend Chapter 17.42.200. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Brandon Levine from Mercy Wellness. I'm the Executive Director. We've been working here for a little over 7 years, and this has been a pretty good ride working with you guys. It's made it nice. I do want to thank staff and council for approving the urgency ordinance for the adult use sales. Went off without a hiccup. It was one of the most nostalgic things in our industry. We got to see a lot of new people coming into Cotati that normally wouldn't have driven up here just due to us being the only licensed operator. Like they said, I'd like to echo maybe a little larger square footage. We've been working on plans, and my plans actually are only 2,910 square feet. For the last 5 years, we've been operating in 712 feet, and the first 2 years, we were operating in 510 square feet. I feel that we've shown responsibility and the ability to provide what this city is looking for. I don't think it's unreasonable to expand a little bit larger, maybe making it a maximum of 3,000 square feet. The deliveries, we haven't considered taking on deliveries. It's a whole nother ballgame. I do support having the delivery license if it is to a vetted and responsible operator. I'm sure he's going to make sure that it goes to the right applicant and that it is a safe location. Can't read a lot of my writing, so I think that's about it. Yeah, thank you guys.
Anyone else like to come up and speak?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Tom Monahan. We have some property that's involved in this zoning area, and I wanted to just make a couple comments on the square footage issue. I think the 3,000 square foot suggested was a good compromise. I think you could even be a little bit higher than that. I think that's a good amendment to the ordinance. Just a couple of other things I just wanted to mention. The license renewal every 2 years is a little bit of a question in my mind. I'm wondering if that could be looked at. It's a big capital improvement when you do something like this, and so if you build a restaurant and you only have a 2-year renewal, you can be, finding yourself in a tough spot because it's a very significant capital improvement. And so I'd wonder if that might be looked at to be, typically you'd see more like, 5 years or something. So I don't know if that can be considered or discussed. I understand the reasons for a shorter leash on that, but I think there's another consideration we might want to think about there. I want to encourage the commission to adopt the ordinance. I think it's a good step forward, and I appreciate all your support. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Commissioners, I had to pinch myself. I couldn't believe that you asked the city staff and the police chief a legal question. It's really quite amusing and concerning. We don't ask planning staff and the police chief legal questions, especially in the city of Cotati, where the police chief has been admonished by a federal court of not knowing the law and been reprimanded strongly for violating people's civil rights here in Cotati, wasting over $100,000 in legal fees for the city of Cotati, and then also damages to me of $50,000. So I thought we learned our lesson. We don't go to city staff for legal advice. If you have questions about legalities, you should be consulting the city attorney, or you should be going out of house. Because even our city attorney has been wrong so many times, has brought so much litigation upon this city for being wrong. I can't tell you how many times. My second point is, look, whenever you have a question for city staff, the recommendation by the California League of Cities is that you have weeks to plan for these meetings. You ought to be taking your questions directly to city staff and having them get back to you in a reasonable amount of time. Why do you want to do that? Why do you not want to take up all this time at the city during these meetings to ask questions privately? Is that it's supposed to help streamline these meetings. It's supposed to allow you to help prepare staff to give you an answer that they're prepared to give you. This way you're not blindsiding staff with a question they're not prepared for. Some city council members and planning commissions will do this, will ask questions that they could have asked earlier in the week to make themselves look smart. And that's not a good reason to do this. It really isn't. The best thing for the city to run smoothly is to ask your questions, if you have valid questions, to staff, so that he or she can put together a really nice, comprehensive report for you. But then if there's any discrepancies in what you're hearing, you have time to ask those questions. But your question, Mr. Onice, was very pertinent, but really was the kind of thing where you should have asked, then they could have contacted the city attorney, and they could have been here tonight. And I still think you have serious questions about that in order to give you grounds to hold this meeting over for the next meeting to get the right answers. You vote on this without having the right answers, correct answers, you're going to be doing the city an injustice.
Thank you, Mr. Barish.
May I have 30 more seconds, ma'am?
No.
Yes, ma'am, I'd like 30 more seconds. Please don't make this personal, because I've called your husband out many times for being the town drunk and convicted of drunk driving and being drunk in truck. It's not the time.
Personal. Your 3 minutes
you
is
ought to
up.
give me
Thank
one
you
more
so
minute,
much.
ma'am. 1 minute to finish.
I'm sorry. I said your
You're
time is up.
still as brutal a Nazi as you've ever
Would
been.
anybody else like to come up? Yes, thank you.
Hello, Madam Commissioner and Planning Commission. Vicki, thank you so much for all your hard work. I'm Amber Asucci. I work with the 421 group, and I've been working with Mercy Wellness for over a year, doing community outreach efforts on their behalf. And I've been reaching out to all the local businesses here in Cotati and community groups to answer any questions that they may have about the process of developing this permanent ordinance. And I've been finding that there's nothing but community support, which is really exciting, and folks are excited for the comprehensive local regulations. I know that Mercy cares about the community, and we really thank you for moving this ordinance forward. And thank you for your time.
Anyone else like to come and speak?
Good evening. My name is Felicia Acamazo. I also work with Mercy Wellness. I know we sound like a broken record tonight. I apologize. I actually didn't have a comment until I was actually furthering reviewing the ordinance, and I think I may have found just a couple of mistakes, and I just wanted to bring it to the commission and Ms. Parker's attention. Regarding item D, standards for manufacturing, D, what would be item 3C, it says no closed loop systems shall be utilized with prior inspection and approval of the city's and fires codes officials. I think you meant without. So that would be just something to note. And then another thing that I had seen and for myself in clarification, it's item C, standards for commercial cannabis retail sales. And specifically number, let's see, 11, it's operating standards. And it's 11H. And then it's where it talks about the cannabis retail facility being able to engage in 5% of non-cannabis activity. The last sentence is a little confusing because it says, but shall not include clothing. Currently, Mercy, we do sell t-shirts and hats. So we're curious if that's something that we will no longer be able to do as this paragraph is written. I do feel that it's important to that to be included. A lot of our patients and now our adult use customers, they love Mercy as the brand, and they do like to support us in any way possible, and that could be purchasing these types of items. Thank you again for your time. Lastly, I just want to encourage you to swiftly move things along, because under the temporary license that we currently have issued by the state of California, we have a ticking time as well, and we have to get moving on our permanent licensure, and we cannot move forward without that this ordinance going into play. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come and speak? All right, seeing none, I'm closing the public hearing. So I think we have a couple things to go over, a couple of notes that I've made. One of them is, does anybody have any more questions of staff? All right. So the outdoor growing, that's one of the issues. Council wanted 0.
No, we wanted 0. Council wanted
2
to allow.
So I wasn't at that meeting, but I would be okay with 2. Because I think 6 plants growing in your house is a lot.
I agree. I brought up the question at the Planning Commission when it was actually brought up, and I think 2 is a good, adequate compromise. I'd like to see people be able to, work more outdoors. They don't have to grow the full 6. So if they just wanted to grow 2, that would be unacceptable. So I support that.
Yeah, I don't object to that. We had said none at this time because of the chief's concerns about attractive nuisance, attracting vandalism and theft, and wanted to see how it shook out once the product becomes, now that it's legal, maybe that will drop off, but we're not sure. So, I'm still concerned about but 2 plants is certainly less of an attraction than 6.
I'm fine with the 2. I think I would, if the chief wanted to add anything on that after what the council had to share on that, I'm fine. But when we all discussed it at our last meeting, I think that's really where we left it at 0 and to our recommendation to council to see them kind of talk it out more and discuss it, and if we had any additional feedback from the public. on it after we did our recommendation of 0. But I think we were all open to hearing it come back to us and doing some limit on that. 6 seemed like a lot outdoor.
Yeah.
So I like the alternative option of 2.
You okay with 2, Steve? Okay. I think the other issue here is the medicinal and the retail of the 3,000. What I'm hearing is that Mercy Wellness wanted 3,000. Our staff indicated 2,000. At some point, it was 4,000 with both of them combined. So I'd like to hear what everyone wants to say about that.
I'm fine with 3. I mean, 2 was just an attempt to prevent us from, growing the Costco of marijuana here in Cotati, so.
To be honest with you, I'm actually fine with 4. I mean, I feel like if at one point our council was fine with 4, and if at some point we get to that point again, it's just like I think like that burden or that cost is like put on the applicant, and if at one point we said we're okay with it, I don't see why we can't. It's not saying that, tomorrow when they come in and apply, they're going to apply for 4,000 when they have a plan for 2910, but to be at that if we need that expansion, it's set. So if council was comfortable with that, then.
Well, they were comfortable with 2 2,000-foot stores. And there's a difference between 2 2,000-foot stores and 1
Were they
4,000-foot store.
I mean, when they were, sorry, maybe I got that wrong. I thought they were could be one store, but 2 different licenses. So they're 2 different retailers, but 1 owner. It could be potentially 1 owner with 2 different licenses, right?
Correct. The last time you saw it, it could be 1 owner with 2 different premises. So the way to meet the state regulations under that previous definition is there would be a wall between them with separate entrances.
That seems like old prohibition type stuff.
Yeah. So.
I'm okay with 4.
I'm fine with 4, but.
I heard that 3,000 was requested, so I am concerned about it getting to grow slowly. So I'm happy with 3, but I don't have a strong opinion about that. I think it would be better. I've been in the premise on the guided tour, and I think it would be better not to have it grow too large too fast. And I heard 3,000 being requested. So.
I'm kind of with Jamie. If you're going to put the time and effort into building something like this, I think you should do the 4,000, because I think it's a lot of cost to do. I don't know. I mean, I just look at it as.
I just want to point out the applicant only requested 3.
Well.
I mean, proposed it as a compromise, but.
But we're not doing it just for this applicant.
Sure.
So it's not specific.
But at the moment it's 2,000, and that's almost 3 times what's already there.
No, we've never had any kind of trouble at all. I just, maybe if there was other issues around this, I mean, I would think I would be more concerned about the delivery than I would be about anything else. But he has a really stellar, reputation in town.
They don't have to build from that.
It would just allow them to. It would give them leeway. Like I said, we're not doing this for just 1. We're doing this as an ordinance.
So I'd like
Well, we're 2 and 2 on this, so.
I'd like to comment, Chairman. Just from the public safety aspect, it going to 4,000, I don't have an issue with that. Mercy Wellness has always adhered to all of the inspections and safety measures that I have asked for. They've implemented safety measures beyond what I've asked for. They got one of the best camera systems in the city as far as surveillance goes. So I would just like to say I really I don't see the size being a matter of public safety, so I have no issues with it.
Well, let's talk about some other stuff, and we'll circle back to that one. So we have about the the different water and the solar, I guess it would be solar and water, right? For recycled water and alternative energies used?
Yeah, I mean, one example that comes to mind is we wouldn't typically want someone trucking in water because it doesn't do, regionally, it doesn't do any good if we cap water use, but we're bringing water in from somewhere else in the region. So it's one of the reasons that we did that. However, if you think that maybe someone is bringing in recycled water or tertiary treated water, then that might be ultimately a great thing. So, so yeah, something along those lines would be what we would be looking at in the permitting process to see you're not just adding to the overall water consumption of the region, but you're doing something creative with it. And yes, on solar it would be, or excuse me, on energy it would be outfitting everything with LEDs or solar or some combination of those.
Okay. I'm trying to look at all.
I had a follow-up question on that. So with that on there, it said it had to require a license for anything that's alternative. Is that correct?
They all require a license. So this is not so the alternative energy and water isn't an option for personal growing on residential properties. It's only an option for the commercial. And all of the commercial activities require a license. Maybe not a use permit, but they all require a license.
So it's not an additional for the alternative?
No, it's just something that they would propose at the time they applied, and we would look at it along with everything else.
Okay.
So I can't think of, what were the other things that, I'm looking at my notes.
One other one was the prohibition on clothing and promotional item
yes.
sales, and I'm curious about the origins of that.
The speaker was correct that as it's structured right now, there is a prohibition on sale of anything that is not directly used for the consumption of cannabis, and so that is clothing or other promotional items. That came out of our existing dispensary ordinance. So if we wanted to allow for that, we're right now working on if even for the things like vaping or other tools that you would use to ingest, that does not get charged like the cannabis tax gets charged. So right now we're working through all of those different taxation schemes. So we could certainly come up with a way to allow that activity on the premises if you chose to. I guess from a staff perspective, I don't think off the top of my head that I see any need to limit the promotional items necessarily in either square footage or quantity. It seems like that should be up to the operator. And
yeah,
so,
I would probably just strike that sentence.
Yeah.
The whole sentence doesn't seem to be used.
I agree.
Hats and shirts. All right.
Where is it?
It's on page 146. It's the last sentence in H.
All right, so I'm going to circle back to the 3,000 or 4,000.
I think, do we still have caregiver versus personal?
I think that was combined.
Oh.
Well, it's combined in the proposal, which is different than what we saw in October, so we could talk about that. I mean, I'm comfortable with them being the same in the regulations.
I think so,
6
too.
plants each, and then the police don't have to ask, are you a caregiver, when they see the 14 plants or something?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really hear anything from anyone. I was hoping someone would speak up if they felt strongly one way or the other, because 6 seemed, I guess 6 is sufficient. I just didn't know if 6 would be too limiting for a caregiver, but.
Right.
It depends on how you cultivate.
So
4,000 or 3,000?
4,000.
You're the,
So, back to my Costco concerns. In general, I would prefer regulations that encourage the development of 2 dispensaries. And if we allow one to be large enough to absorb all the business in town, then that's not going to happen. So that's the other reason to think about limiting it slightly smaller. But I don't know the size of the market. I don't know how this is all going to shake out. So maybe 4,000 is just as reasonable. It's a pretty big store. 4,000 square feet is pretty good size.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going up an awful lot, and I'd prefer to see that we calibrate it gradually, and that if necessary, there was other smaller operations that were around, that it isn't a facility for having a larger operation. So I think it's just a process of starting, and it just seems pushing it a little bit. 4,000 is big.
you're the tiebreaker here, Steve.
It's our last gift to you.
3,000 or 4,000?
I like to give you an answer, but I honestly have no opinion.
He's going to come up with 3,500. Oh, is that what you said?
Flip a coin.
Well, if that's the case, and they came with 2,900 for the expansion, then I guess I'll go with the 3,000. Even though I'd like the 4,000, but
You can make another proposal.
You can always readdress it.
Yeah, well, we'll have to readdress it if they want to expand. That's my argument.
and that's kind of my argument of
Yeah.
this too, is that, you know, it's kind of like even with the license. The reasons they come up for a license, the reason they come up every 2 years is because we kept this very regulated in the city of Cotati. And we kept it very regulated because we wanted to make sure it worked. And it did work. And we're very proud of that as a planning commission. I was on the original planning commission when
Yeah.
Brandon came up, and we kept a tight rein on this. And I think we, like you said, we've done a really good job, and he's done a really good job. And along with our police department, we've never had any kind of troubles at all. So
Yeah.
I'd hate to punish any business in town that wants to expand and say, well, we want to do it slowly, and we want to do it with, you know, just because we want other competitors to come in, and we want to make sure that, you know, you're not, you know, the only guy in town. I know we didn't say that to Lowe's when they came in, you know. We didn't say it to Oliver's when they wanted to expand, but we're saying it to Mercy Wellness. So,
If the chair, it wouldn't be too difficult, I don't think, for staff to develop what we might call a performance standard that says outright the cap is 3,000 square feet. However, after a successful 2-year renewal review, an applicant can go up to 4. If that's a way to bridge that, where we don't have to come back for a full amendment of the ordinance, but it rewards folks who are successfully implementing the performance standards of the ordinance. It's one idea.
So one could come back sooner if they didn't want to wait the 2 years, or wait the 2 years and expand with a good
Under the scenario I just...
scenario. Yeah.
Yeah, under the scenario I just outlined, they would have to wait 2 years, which sounds like it wouldn't be an immediate concern for Mercy Wellness. If 2 years is within their horizon, they would have that option to go up to 4.
I like that.
But
It's compromise.
I don't want to set up a system where a business has to plan on 2 sets of tenant improvements. That's kind of a problematic for a business owner, I think, to sort of I mean, I know that maybe there's this model, you start out small and you grow, but that's expensive. Like I said, I don't feel strongly about the 3,000. I'm just concerned about going from 800 to 4,000 in one fell swoop, and that's the current change. But it's also, we're just making a recommendation to council, and I'm sure staff will tell council that we had a big debate about 3,000 versus 4,000, and they'll make the call. So, if whoever makes the motion includes 4,000 in the motion, then I'd still vote for the ordinance on that.
Good to know.
All right, I think we've pretty much touched on every topic.
There was one other one about the, and I was trying to find it as someone from Mercy was speaking. Yeah, and it was on, I think it was under retail sales. I believe it's on I just don't know if I found the right spot.
Oh, there was a suggestion to insert a sentence.
Yeah, a sentence
making
around
it clear
adult.
that this allows both adult and medicinal use.
Medicinal, yeah, I think it's maybe on page 140. I just don't know if I found the right section.
We can, I'm sorry, through the chair, if I could add. Thank you. There are a couple of spots where we could clarify that. I think because it applies ordinance-wide, I think that we could we could beef up the language in the very beginning of the ordinance. I think that would be helpful, but in addition to that, the speaker raises a good point that it's a great footnote for the land use table as well.
Yeah.
So I think we can do both of those things pretty readily.
Okay.
All right.
And then one last thing, the question about the 2-year permit, I think we've addressed that by allowing the renewal to be administrative and not have to go through the hearing process. So I think we're fine.
Yeah.
The 2-year administrative renewal is fine.
Yeah.
All right, with that being said, I need a motion, Ms.
I'm
Brady.
trying to find it. I gotta find the number.
$124.
That's the page number?
Yeah.
This is what happens when you do it electronically. Sure. Move to approve, see, I read it all out. Ordinance of the city, no, wait, is this right? Okay. Or move to recommend to council, is that what I say? Move to recommend to council, let's see, the recommendations with, I'll read the whole thing. Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cotati amending Title 17, Chapter 17.42 by adding Section 17.42.200 Commercial Cannabis Uses and 17.42.210 Personal and Medicinal Cannabis Cultivation, amending Tables 2-2 and 2-3 of Chapter 17.22, allowable uses and permit requirements, amending Chapter 17.90 definitions, repealing Chapter 8.24 medical marijuana dispensaries, and adopting of exemption findings pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. With changes.
With the changes and conditions.
Changes and conditions, including 4,000 square feet.
And 2 outdoor.
And what?
And 2 outdoor.
And 2 outdoor cultivation plants.
And removing the prohibition on other retail. That was the line, wasn't it?
Removing prohibition on page 146H, the last sentence, and I think adding adult sales to the land use table and throughout the document. I think that's it, Carrie.
I'll second. Ask for roll call, Carrie? Sure.
Vice Chair Ford,
Yes.
Commissioner Brady,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Nines,
No.
Chair Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Hancock.
Yes.
All right, thank you for coming. We have a little more business to do, so.
Thanks.
I can't find my other page here.
get it? I was keeping it right up at the front.
Anything at the bottom? Vicki, do we have a staff report? I'm sorry, there was nothing at the bottom here, so I'm looking. There's no adjourn or, there you go. Reports by staff.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I had really just a couple of brief things. JP has been working on the contract for the wayfinding consultant, and will be coming back to both this body and the DRC and asking for two members to be appointed to what we're loosely calling a steering committee.
They're all leaving just for a second. Okay, that's better.
Thank you. So we're looking to develop a steering committee for the bulk of that wayfinding program. So we'll be coming back to the commission and asking for two representatives from the DRC, and for a board member from the chamber as well. So we expect to start that process in the next maybe, it'll probably start on a staff level in the next 45 days, just helping them get background information, et cetera. So we'll be back before that to ask for those two appointments. And on the development project side, we're in the midst of what I think we're all hoping is the last review of the improvement plans for the Cotati Station project, the multifamily project. So it's gone to design review, and it's going through permitting right now. So I know they're hoping to break ground sometime late spring or summer. And so I think that's about it on the development. There's little projects going on here and there, but those are the big ones that this body had to work hard for. So thank you.
Reports by commissioner. All right, seeing none, we are adjourned.
Thank you all.